Okay, great. And then I'm going to record on here too. Sorry. Okay, and I have your permission to record. Is that correct?
You have my permission to record. Yes.
Thank you very much. So yeah, I can interpret a little bit, or I can share how I prepped, or how would you like, or what would you like me to do?
First, tell me about you and how you got into this and what you plan to do now that you're getting your bachelor's degree.
Yeah, awesome. Okay. Well, I'm in Fort Collins, Colorado, and I have a 10-year-old and a daughter. And but I grew up in Iowa, and I started taking care of, well, my niece has cerebral palsy, so I started taking care of her. So she used some sign language, but not fully, just because of the movement and things like that. And then so that kind of started me off when I was 10 years old. At that time when she was born, and then I just started working with kids with disabilities since then, through high school. And then when I moved out to here, Colorado, I started working at the Fort Collins School District, Poudre School District here. And so for 12 years, I've been there. And then working with just integrated services or special ed as like a teacher assistant. And then I started working with kids that were deaf, deaf plus. And so I've been doing that the last 3 years. And then, 5 years ago, I decided I wanted to go back to school for this, because basically the students had taught me sign language, throughout the years. Yeah. So it was pretty amazing. And now, just because I had a different like career choice before that, but now I like figured out what I want to do is this, because it's so fun. Like, I love it. It's a challenge and it's fun, and like we can always be improving. Like, there's always new knowledge that we can gain, and keeping up with the deaf community. And then, so I have a pretty big deaf community here. It took me a while to get that, but I interpret at my church. And so we have a deaf ministry of almost 10 now, that come on a regular basis. And so that kind of stemmed my deaf community, and then meeting their friends. And this past year and a half, I finally met deaf friends my age. And so we've been hanging out, and that's been like the best thing, because just being immersed in the language, and so much like improvement has been since then. And I meet a deaf mentor at a restaurant every Thursday, and then a deaf friend that's my age at coffee every Friday morning. So I've been doing that for a while now. So yeah, it's been awesome. And then, so I took this past year off to work, or to homeschool my daughter, because of COVID.
Oh,
I know.
yes.
So, and then I actually nannied at the same time, because I've never not worked my whole life. So I was like, I have to work. And so I was able to nanny a newborn baby and teach my daughter. And so I had to take a year off, and now they're not, it's so weird. Usually they're hiring interpreters at every school district around here. And I don't know, because of COVID or just students graduating, but so there wasn't anyone in my area, like the next 3 towns. And so, but about 45 minutes away, there was a school that's hiring. So I applied like a month ago and got an interview right away and got the job. Yeah.
Okay, hang on 1 second.
Yeah.
I think my alarm's going off.
No problem.
You can just open it. Stop. Yeah. I guess when I did it, I put it on snooze. Sorry about that.
Oh, that's fine. No worries. Yeah, so we are done with portfolio August like 6th, and so I start my new job August 10th. I know. So perfect timing.
Incredible.
Yeah. So it's all working out perfectly. And I'm excited just to start at a new school district, just to see how they run their program. And then I can come back to my school district that's here closer later on. So,
okay.
Yeah.
How far away is the school district you're going to work with?
45 minutes away.
Oh.
Yeah. And I'm used to like 5-10 minutes, the school that has the deaf program here. So, I mean, if something opens up, I'll see, but I don't want to leave the other school either. So I think it'll be a good experience. I can listen to podcasts for those 45 minutes, and
yes.
So yeah, I'm excited.
Well, that sounds like a huge step to step to step
Yeah,
of progress, and there you are with the job already, and you haven't even finished.
I know. Yeah. So I'm really excited. Yeah, it's all
And,
working out the way it's
and
supposed to.
yes, and you'll have your bachelor's degree.
I know. Amazing.
Excellent.
Yeah. So,
Okay.
yeah. Um, I don't know if you want me to interpret for a little bit or if you want me to just let you know how I prepared or what would you think?
Yeah, let me know how you prepared.
Okay. Um, so it's hard because I can like prepare for hours, and I probably did throughout the week, but some I'm like need to limit myself because of all the videos we have every week. I have to be able to like plan ahead and make sure I have enough time. But so I could plan on or prepare forever. But the main things I did was watched it all the way through, and I muted it so I didn't hear the interpreter. So I watched it all the way through without taking notes first. And I really liked how it was a shorter because some of our internship videos are like an hour and a half. So this was nice to be like short. I could watch it all the way through, and then I went back and slowed it down a little bit, the speed on the YouTube, and just watched if there's any like finger spelling or years or any content that I wasn't familiar with for signing or whatever. I would pause it and just replay it or just keep it going and see if I could pick it up on cohesion or context clues. Um, and then, so once I knew that she was giving more of like a timeline of sign language, I was able to, and I already know timeline and death history, so I have that schema. But I just went back and looked up some additional timelines just to get some more information. Definitely during the um, Greek philosopher and Socrates and that quote, I definitely looked that up because I was like, I don't even know how to say this, Cratylus. I don't know if I'm saying it right, the essay. So I researched that for a little bit for sure. And yeah, some of the blunt that people being blunt and things like that. I remember I learned that in my first ASL class, and so it was nice to like remember that and be like, oh yeah. And I liked her examples though, like just to be more expand on that, especially the restaurant talking the stages. Which I looking back now when I meet with my deaf friends, I'm like, oh yeah, that's true. But I'm the same way because I'm like, I don't want to leave. Um, so after I did all of that, oh, I did make I had 2 pages of notes after that, kind of like a content map. Like I took more detailed notes and then I just took like highlighted like the main things that like I just wanted to review again. And just wrote out the years that they had it, comparing it to like the years and different things they had on like the detailed timelines online. Um, and so after I did all of that, the last step, I mean, I did probably more than that, but the last step I did listen to the interpreter and just to hear how it compared. And most of it was pretty on. There's a couple things that were different. And and you know, word choice and vocabulary was different. And so I'm working on a more like higher level educated, um, can't think of the word, but basically word choices and grammar and things like that. And the other thing I'm working on for, well, both, but mostly even more for ASL to English interpretations is eliminating those filler words like and so or like and I'll start a sentence with that and really just focusing on English like sentence order and grammar because if I do word for word of what she's signing, that's not correct grammar or a full complete sentence in English. And so really working on that fluency just to come out straight and like rearrange. So take in the message and then rearrange the structure and then output it. Yeah. So
that's a great deal of prep.
Yeah, because we have a lot of videos, but I use this one and the teaming as my priorities because I'll be with somebody else and I want to, you know, maybe use this for my portfolio evidence and things like that. So And some of those like was quicker than others, just looking up a term or whatever. So yeah, and I like setting up my mentorship at the end of the week ish, because then I have the week to like, oh, I'm gonna listen to 5 minutes here, or I'm gonna be cooking dinner and I can listen, so it's like a progression throughout the week.
Okay.
So
yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
Rather than all at one time and it doesn't have time to sink in and for you to think about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good planning.
Yeah, it's the third week now, so I'm getting it, figuring it out, because I'll prepare a little bit for this or teaming, and then I'll get my daily interpretations done. So once I prepped and got those done, then I'm like, oh, I have some extra time right here really quick. So yeah, that's what I've been doing.
Okay. And I have down that you're working on vocabulary, fillers, English grammar. Anything else?
Yeah, just meaning, making sure that I don't have like skewed meaning, or that I miss some information, like why can't I think of the word now? Everything's falling out. Omissions. Making sure I don't leave information out, or receptively understanding what she's saying, and making sure that I get the goal of the message across, like the overall goal of her message, and then of each utterance or sentence, to make sure that, when I do switch those words around or the grammar, that is still capturing the whole meaning. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Actually, I just thought of one more. Compression. Because I know there's a part where she's like deaf community, deaf culture, or community, deaf da 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 da. And so instead of saying deaf every time, I compressed it to just say community, culture, language.
Okay.
Because I learned about compression this past year, a little bit more detailed, and so because ASL is visual and kind of gives you the steps more detailed, and so condensing that and compressing it to, okay, what is the goal? Do I need to list off every single thing, or can I compress it? But in this one, it was just a simple, I don't have to say deaf before every single one, because it was just going quick. Yeah.
Okay. That is a good one, because especially going into English, we tend to not go on and on. Don't have a list of 10 things.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah. I mean, I could go on and on about other things, but I think that's the main few goals that I have. I'm just trying to think if there's anything else. Not that I can think of offhand. Oh, one more. Demand that came in was the screen, how it was most of the time up close, but some of the times it was like whoop, and I'm like, whoa. So I mean, obviously I noticed that during prepping, but it's still sometimes hard to see it, because it was more, and especially 2D or not 3D already, and then they're like, whoa. And so luckily they didn't do it very much, but that was definitely something, a demand that came up during prep, where I had to make sure I knew that content more, understanding, just because it was far away.
Right.
But
comes across as a shock.
Yeah, so prepping was good, but I mean, it's similar to even like when you are in a 3D in a real life, because they're moving around the stage, or they might be way over here and they might be closer. So it's a good thing that came up, because now I have some control choices to it, and know some possibilities. Yeah, I think, some of the content, just trying to think of what I highlighted. I think I talked about it all, the basic things. Just there's a lot of years, and just making sure I just remembered back, because I know like Gallaudet and American School of the Deaf, like I knew those dates, so it was just a reminder for that. So that was good. I have one more page of notes for it. Oh, the when she expanded on like the egg crates falling over when the deaf student comes to class late, and she was going fast, and I'm like, what fell out of the truck? I'm like, what? And so that was nice when I went back to listening at the last step I did, and I'm like, oh, egg crates, okay, because I'm like, I know a truck I'm like dumped over, but I didn't know what it was. Um, yeah, I think that's mainly. There was another part for a possibility for compression, but I decided not to use it because she was naming off all like successful careers for deaf people. She was saying, athletes, actors, attorneys, and so I think that was important to list them, so I didn't compress there. And then, yeah, another one was the different Hispanic, Asian, Black cultures. Because I could have said like many different cultures, but it was nice to get those specifics, so I didn't compress there. But I thought about it. Oh, one more. When she's talking about the different grammar, how ASL is not English. It's not based off English. It's its own language, has its own um, grammar, syntax, mythology, hand shapes. And again, I thought it could be maybe a chance to compress, but I'm like, no, those are really specific to show why it's not English. Has all the different characteristics. So yeah, but it was nice to just identify those parts where in a different text it could be a opportunity for compression. Yeah, I think that's it.
That's very good prep.
Yes, thank you. I know sometimes I could be like I could keep going, but I mean in reality, some like something like this, I think you would have more content. But working in the schools, like when I worked before, it was you're with a student when you get off the bus, you put them on the bus, like they don't want us to stay late or come in early. It was hard to even discuss with the teacher of deaf like updates, and so it was like literally through the hall. Like I stayed a lot after just because I'm like this. I have to discuss this with you, and so prep time, needless to say, was not a lot. So, but a lot of communication with the general education teacher, so I knew what was coming up and working with Deaf Plus, I had to do a lot of adaptions and different things for what they were doing. And so it was good to know ahead of time. But that's just my experience with K-12. So I'm sure like high school and things, there might be like off periods, but I always worked elementary and middle school.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, prep time for schools.
I know.
That's a job in and of itself.
I know. Yeah.
How to find time, how to negotiate time anywhere.
I know. Yeah, it's hard because I think it all stems around money because the district doesn't have money to pay us to come in early or stay late. So it's understandable. I mean, if there's something like we need to set up a meeting, they'll pay us if it's like an hour or longer. So they will, but it's just not something that can be like regular, which is unfortunate.
Right. Well, you have a good handle on it.
Thank you. Yeah, I love it. The first day I was like, oh my goodness, like I knew I picked the right profession and career.
Okay.
So yeah, it's so fun. And of course, your books have taught me so much. Seriously. I know. I show my daughter your picture on the book on the back. I'm like, I'm gonna meet with her right now. So it was really exciting.
Well, I always hope that they're useful and not too overwhelming, but useful things to look at, things to think about. Oh
yeah, every analysis I write, I pull that book. It's right there.
Okay. I have a feeling you know it well.
Yeah, I even met my last week's mentor is like, oh, look at this page. She's going to give you all these examples. She was like quoting your book and like page numbers. And she's like a really experienced, she was one of our mentors, just like you. So I'm like, wow, that's pretty cool.
She probably knows it better than I do.
We're all going to know page number by page number, like, go to this to find this.
Right, that darn error of 14B, it keeps coming up.
Exactly. It's amazing. That's awesome. Thank you.
Good. I'm glad it's helpful.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, shall you do it?
I shall. Would you like me to share my screen and play it from my?
Yes, please.
Yes. Okay, 1 second. I can't see. I guess I don't need to see mine, but let me see one thing real quick. It's always tricky. Gallery view. There we go. Okay, can you see the video?
I can.
Okay. All right, our boxes are pretty small, but that's okay. I'm just voicing. Whoops. Okay, would you like me to like do 5 minutes or just keep going or?
Yeah, 5-ish minutes and you can stop or I'll say, is that good?
Okay, and then we can talk about it.
And then we can talk about it and then we can keep going.
Okay, perfect. Hello. I'm deaf. I'm profoundly deaf. My parents didn't know I was deaf until I was 18 months old. My parents' world crashed because Hearing Society looked at the deaf community as a negative aspect. My ear, nose, and throat doctor informed my parents that I should not learn how to use sign language, that it would make me separate from the hearing world, and that I should learn how to speak and lip read instead so I could match American society and the American hearing world. I learned how to lip read and I tried to match the hearing world, and I learned how to speak, but it was a challenge. I was very frustrated. I did not have 100% communication access. However, when I was 3 years old, my first word that I spoke was boat. My parents were driving, and I looked out the window and saw boats, and I kept saying the word. That's probably why I have 29-foot boat today, cruiser boat today. Looking back, my parents realized that the doctor didn't understand how critical language development is for infants. Deaf babies needed their first language, which was sign language, which is normal for them. And that development, again, is critical. And that they should learn how to read lips and speak later in life. It's the most important part for deaf babies is have access to sign language, their first language. I'm 53 years old now, and I'm very proud to be deaf. I cherish the values of sign language in deaf community and culture. It's opened up the world to me more than before. I love deaf history, community, culture. We don't see ourselves of having a disability. We are proud of who we are. We can do everything just the same as you can. We have successful deaf attorneys, doctors, actors, engineers, college professors, athletes, actors. We even have deaf receptionist and lawyer in the White House. When I talk about culture, I value deaf culture just like any other culture, Asian, Spanish, Black culture. They cherish and value their values and their culture just the same as we value sign language in our culture. Let me give you an example of the deaf cultural normative. We can be very blunt. If someone comes up and we notice they've gained weight, we'll say, wow, you're fat, what happened? Hearing people don't say that. They say, oh, wow, you look nice. If their haircut or their clothes look weird, we tell them. We say that's wrong for you. Hearing people are very nice culturally. They say, oh, you look good, and that's it. But it's nice to be honest as well. We also tend to be very specific. If someone says that someone died, we say, what happened? Ask them all these questions. But in hearing culture, they say, oh, I'm so sorry for your loss. If I have a hearing student that comes late to my classroom, they say, sorry, I'm late. Okay. However, if I have a deaf student that comes into my classroom late, they say, sorry, I'm late. I was driving down the highway and there was a truck and they dumped over egg carts and police and ambulances came, and they'll go on and on for 2 or 3 minutes. And at the end, they'll say, sorry, I'm late. That's part of our culture. We value sharing information. Let me tell you about our 5-stage goodbye. If a hearing friend comes to my house for a party, they'll stay about 1.5 hours and they leave. But if I have deaf friends over, they stay forever, even when I give them hints and push them out the door. If we go to a restaurant, we'll be talking at the table and the manager will be coming over and say, we're closing in 5 minutes, and we'll say, okay. And we'll keep talking and socializing for 5 or 10 minutes more, and we get up and we move towards the door. But we can keep talking and socializing 10 more minutes, and then we go to the door and keep talking, and the manager shuts off the lights and pushes us out the door. Then we go out to the parking lot, and that's our 4th stage to say goodbye. We keep discussing and talking, and then we get in the car and keep talking as well, and then we finally leave. We deaf people rely on information compared to hearing people who listen to the radio or talk and take in information that way. We rely on sign language for information. We rely on those socialization, and it's a critical part of our culture. When we talk about sign language, it's not something new. Sign language has been here for many years. We have to fight every day to protect our sign language. We experience a lot of oppression, discrimination, just like any other culture that experiences oppression and discrimination. Because of their languages, we're just the same. Looking back to 427 BC, Greek philosopher Plato wrote an essay, Catullus, and the character Socrates said this quote, if we don't have...
Is that good for now?
Yeah.
And then we'll pick it back up there.
Yep. I'm gonna stop sharing for a second so I can see you bigger. There we go.
Okay. Okay, you first.
I think it was pretty good start, overall. I'm not sure, I think I might have added some ums or ands or so's maybe, but not too many, I don't think. There's a couple like articulation errors, I think, or just words that I started off and needed to fix it. But I think I did that pretty like professional and didn't have it like be obtrusive and distracting. I think I got most of the information and the meaning and the point across, but there was a couple areas that I think I missed maybe a utterance here and there, but nothing crazy. I realized that my when I was practicing, I didn't do it as much because I'm practicing and my family's like listening, but they like know all the words to all the interpretations and they like quote it later. But my vocal intonation and affect was going more with like her facial expressions, and I think I emphasized that more during this, so that was good to see. Um, I always feel awkward when I'm like, I know the crowd's laughing, and she was too about her um, boat, her 29-foot cruiser. And so I don't know. I laughed, but I don't know if it sounds unnatural or if that's like important to make sure to keep in the interpretation because it's non-contact communication and information. So I know it's important to keep in there. So maybe I just need to practice making it sound more natural and not fake laughing.
My perception was that it sounded natural.
Okay. Okay, good. I think it's just something I need to be like, okay, it's fine. And then for some reason, the 29-foot cruiser, I'm like, the cruiser I lost. And I'm like, I know that because I love that part because I love boats too. But then I was able to still add it in there at the end. So that was good because it like came to me and I was like looking because I don't need to. Sometimes I try to memorize my notes when I'm like, it's right there in front of me. Just watch the finger spelling, you know? And so that's what I've been learning recently too is just if I take a lot of notes, I don't always have to have them out here. Like this is mostly just the prepping. So I don't have notes to like look at because find it distracting, excuse me, because I'm like, well, where am I at in the list? And so I just, instead of relying so much on the notes, I just go back and practice just interpreting the video, without the sound on. So yeah, how do you think?
I would just agree with you in terms of your practicing. That right. Once you've understood and you've filled in the blanks, you've looked up a few things, then I would definitely put your notes aside.
Yeah.
I think that's a good idea. And even when you would, say later tonight or when you go to bed and you might rehearse the presentation in your mind, either out loud, depending, or just to yourself, but just to rehearse it from memory and to not worry about your notes because now the information is yours.
Yeah.
The notes are just a way to get there.
That's really good. Let me write that down now. Yeah, I really like that. That's really good. I was gonna say something now. I can't remember what it was. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Because otherwise I know we can rely on our notes and they become cumbersome and
yeah, I know. I think I remember now a situation. It was last semester. We had to get like deaf consumers and hearing consumers to do presentations, and we had to record it live. And one of my really good friends collects fountain pens, and I had no idea what that was. And he gave me some content, but not a lot. So I met with my deaf tutor. I figured out how to explain it visually, every part, because there's all these different parts and tips. And he barely talked about the actual pen. He talked about like what he wrote with the pen, and like it was more like informational of like journaling in general, or where he goes to journal outside in the mountains. And I know, so I'm like, I focus so much on that, and so that's why it's nice to have some outline, but you never know what's going to come up, and you're not going to follow the script word for word.
Right. But good that you found out what a fountain pen is, because we don't talk about that very much anymore. And yet some people still love them and use them.
Yeah, he spends like hundreds of dollars on them. I know.
Maybe you'll get one for a graduation gift.
I know, maybe.
You never know.
Good thinking.
You might not like fountain pens.
I know. I do like pens. I'm regular pen, so I bet I would like it.
Okay. I'm fully deaf. How else can you say that phrase?
I'm profoundly deaf.
Yeah.
Did I say fully? I thought I said profoundly. Maybe I said fully.
I have down. Oh, actually, I have down profoundly.
Yeah, because she does sign fully, but because that part actually she speaks herself at the beginning, which I thought was pretty powerful to start off that way.
Yes.
That was really cool.
Yes, you're right. You did say profoundly deaf. And it came across how frustrating it was to learn to speak and not have 100% access to the world around her. That came across. The hearing world and the American hearing world.
I know. I added that American that came out of nowhere. I'm like, I didn't practice that. So hearing like society world, or I don't know what would be a better way to say that. The hearing experience, world, the hearing community. I know more of a deaf community when comparing.
Yeah, the English speaking community.
I like that.
The majority culture of speaking and hearing.
Yep.
But it is a comparison between English and ASL.
Okay, more the language.
And visual and hearing, auditory. So she is providing a comparison of both those aspects.
Okay. English and okay.
I'm going to sign something and then you interpret it for me.
Okay. At the same time or after you're done?
After.
Okay. My first word at 3 years old was the word, no, let me start over. I don't think you said 3 years old. My first word was boat. When my parents were driving their car, I looked outside the window and saw a boat. And my father said the word boat, and so then I knew what it was called. Is that something about the father that was added? So did he say the word first? And
no.
Okay.
Right. What? Who's driving the car?
Her dad.
Right. So my parents were driving.
Oh, God. Got it. I think before I said I was riding in the car with my parents. Okay, so my father was driving. Or
because she didn't say who was driving.
Yeah, I was riding in the car with my parents.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. and that takes some processing time.
Yeah.
In order to say that, because the way it comes out in ASL is my parents were driving.
Yeah.
Because she puts them there, or
yep,
or we were all in the car, and so it's an easy error to make because it just flows so well with the ASL. But it catches my ear.
That's a good catch. Thank you.
Uh-huh. And I, talking about using ASL with deaf babies
Mm-hmm.
was interpreted, and also infants was used.
Mm-hmm.
And I think infants is really the
More.
key there,
Yeah.
because babies are just babies for such a short period of
Yeah.
time. And so the addition of infants,
Okay.
which was in the interpretation, was a good one.
Yeah.
And how important exposure to ASL is, and how she learned to read lips. Oh, no, the interpretation was, and learn to read lips and speak later.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Which is exactly what she's saying.
Yeah.
And the affect, the pacing matched the speaker. And I noticed the compression only because you said that about deaf culture and deaf culture, ASL, deaf language. Yes, it was very appropriate there. And then she says,
just the same as us.
Yes, and we can do everything you can.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a little bit of an emphasis on you.
Mm-hmm.
Do everything you can.
Yeah.
So that does a couple of things. One is it brings the audience into the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that level of meaning that's a social connection.
Okay.
And relational connection, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Because she's not terribly formal.
Yeah.
She's trying to relate to the audience and provide this information in a way that they can understand it.
Yeah.
So I thought that interpretation was very effective.
Great.
I know she spells normative. Does that work in English?
I know. I'm like, I had to watch that a couple times to see what she was spelling. I know. I'm like, I don't even know if I've heard of that. So maybe it would be better to say, like, here are the cultural norms, or, yeah, cultural norms.
Yes, I think so.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost a red herring, because
What?
it's like a red herring, like something that's put in there that takes us off the mark.
Mm-hmm.
Because she definitely knows what she's talking about.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think in English we do say African American norms.
Yeah.
Normative culture. I don't think so.
I know. I was like, oh, I figured out what that word is, so now I gotta include it. But yeah, I should have been like, okay, that word's not familiar, so how can I rearrange that? So I could have just said deaf norms.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. This is a time when I think going into first person is very effective. Wow, you're fat. What happened?
Yeah.
And were you aware that you were staying in first person? Am I using a term that you're familiar with?
Yeah, because she showed, like, she's a classifier of someone coming up, so I thought she was, acting. So we're, role shifting, almost taking on that role of that person talking to them.
Yes. Yes.
Uh-huh.
And the whole phrase of, wow, you're fat. What happened? Comes across. Can't you just see the audience go?
Yeah. Do you think that's appropriate, or should I just said, wow, you've gained weight?
No, I think it's appropriate.
Okay.
Gain weight is kind of the gloss
Yeah.
for what she signs.
Yeah.
But I think fat works. And it's not like she gained just a little bit of weight.
Uh-huh.
The person who's coming, it's
noticeable, clearly.
and it is what we say, yes. And the next one about death, and somebody has died, and we also tend to be very specific. Mm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And she uses this sign related to somebody who's passed away. Is there another way that you can say that? We also tend to be very specific.
Detail oriented.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
And specific isn't bad. It works.
Yeah.
But detail oriented provides a broader, more accurate, more precise interpretation.
Okay. Yeah, for sure.
Mm-hmm. And the whole thing about the student who arrives late and tells the story for 3 minutes.
Yeah.
Yes. And one way or another, did you think about compression in that time?
I think I was so focused on what was the A carts. I was so focused on that, I guess I didn't. But you're right. I could have compressed there.
Well, not saying so. Just
okay. Just if I thought about it.
Just talking about it with you, because it's one of the things you've been thinking about.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I could play around with it and maybe not say every little detail. But I think that was part of the point.
Right.
The goal, yeah.
It's kind of a trick question, isn't it?
Yeah. But no, it's good because it would be in a different context. It could have been not as important to list those all out. So it's a good place to identify where it could be a possibility.
In a different context.
Yeah.
When she's not talking about how many things we have to say when we show up late to a classroom, but to retain all that specificity works in this setting. Yeah.
For sure.
But a great place to compress in other situations. Like even interpreting for a deaf student who walks in the classroom where you're going to teach.
Yeah.
And they would go on and on.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Definitely.
And the whole thing around talking, the 5 stages, that all came across clearly. Each stage came across. And the point of, we value sharing information.
Great.
That is very effective.
Great.
And her friends, the deaf friends who stay for a long time. Just so you saw or noticed.
Oh, till midnight.
Yeah.
I didn't notice.
Okay.
Thank you.
And you said very late.
Okay.
So, but I think midnight is an important point.
Yeah.
Because late is depends on the individual.
Exactly. Yeah. Could be 9 after dinner. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I totally missed that. Thank you.
Okay. And we keep talking. Oh, yes. Yeah. I thought this was a very effective phrase. I said the one earlier about we value sharing information. And then there was another one, this came later. We rely on socialization.
Yep.
Is it socialization? Is it socializing? What is she trying to say there, do you think?
Sign language, using sign language as sharing information and interacting and talking with other people. That's how they
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, that's it. Mm-hmm. And sign language has been here for many years.
Yeah, there could be a better way. Sign language dates back to, or something like that. Sign language was originated, many years ago, or sign language. I don't know. I guess there's definitely other ways to say it. I'd have to think about it a little bit more, I think.
Yeah, like sign language has been with us forever. Sign language has been here as long as other languages have been here. Because the phrase many years is, like we've had computers for many years.
It could be a shorter, and she's going into 427 BC, so that's
right.
Yeah, but that doesn't come till after, so I think, yeah.
Right. Yeah, and we just keep on talking. We rely on, yes, each other. Those are my notes. Any more thoughts or questions?
This was just a little one. When she's talking about when someone passes away, a hearing person would just say, I said sorry for your loss, but I know she, like lip reading, she'd say sorry for their passing or something like that. But I thought it was more appropriate because more people say, my experience, sorry for your loss. Is that okay? Even though she's lip reading or she's mouthing past, can we change that when they're mouthing something? Okay.
Yes, yes. And it's a good thing if you were working with this person regularly or especially in this context, I'm sorry for your loss is we hardly ever have a perfect interpretation, is the perfect interpretation. And you're right, maybe in different areas, they say something more common than that.
Okay.
But so that would be something just to keep in mind.
Yeah.
Of where, like, trying to remember what my friends say who are African American. My mother I think they just say passed. My mother passed.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And Black friends said, I'm sorry your mother passed.
Okay.
I think that's a cultural difference.
Yeah. Okay. I have a quick, just overall question since we have a couple more minutes. More going towards English to ASL. Um, I'm trying to work on extending my processing time to be, but I find when I do that, it's harder for me to drop the English form because how do I want to explain it? I rely more towards English because if I go so far back and try to do it more visually, then I miss what the next sentence is. And so I know, like, if I were able to slow it down, like, I know what I would want to say visually, more ASL looking. It's just so fast. So that's, I don't know how, it's just practice, right? Or
just practice. And also one of the things that happens when you make things more visual is it actually allows you more time to get the next part of the message.
Okay.
So for example, I was driving up the hill and it opened up to the 15 peaks, the 15,000 peaks.
Okay.
It's in Colorado.
Yeah. So yeah, you would just show it driving. Well, you could set up the mountains first, 1,000, and then you drive up. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that makes sense. But other times when I'm like needing to expand on meaning, say it's like a larger word, that's more complex, and I fingerspell it, depending on the audience, the target consumers, but saying that they wouldn't understand that word, and I fingerspell it and then I expand, sometimes takes a lot longer than just them saying that one word.
Yes. So, larch trees, Larch. So when I got up there and I saw these 14ers. 14ers, is that it? Okay, thank you. I saw these 14ers and I saw the larch trees. So you can use this sign like you were. That's fine. And you can also make it even more visual.
Becoming
driving, and you're looking up, right? So, and then switch over to, you know. And I don't know how much more you can say if you say like, but tree for sure.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
And because you've made it visual, you're not tied into every word.
Yeah.
And it gets you away from English.
Yep.
Do you have another example? Mine was visual in the first place.
No, that was, that makes total sense. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh, I don't know, just like what's like a medical term that would need more explaining?
Today we're going to be talking about anorexia.
Yeah.
It's important, especially for girls to know about, and even boys, because it happens to boys too.
Yeah.
Okay.
See, that would be, and they would be ready on to the next sentence, and that's kind of, you definitely have to explain meaning if someone wasn't familiar with that term.
Yes. So sometimes one strategy is you might not have to explain it right then.
Okay.
You might be able to explain it a different time.
Yep. You could find another appropriate place to expand on that, because it sounds like they would be, even just the sound of that one line, it sounds like they would be discussing it more. So
Right.
yeah, I love that. Thank you.
Yeah.
And I also, because I asked that question to every mentor I work with, and another one was working on my ASL fluency, just because I didn't have that deaf community until a little bit later in my program. So that's why I'm meeting so much with my deaf mentors and tutors and friends, because just having that immersion with the ASL fluency, that should come out just naturally and not thinking about it. And I'd ready to be on to the next sentence, like taking it in. So
Yeah.
I've noticed that a huge improvement in my work, just working on ASL fluency, just talking.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
In sign language.
And the fluency with which you use the language you currently have.
Mm-hmm.
Just like we do in English,
Mm-hmm.
we know so many words.
Yeah.
And we put those together, we change them, modify them, embellish.
Mm-hmm.
And we can't think of a word that we're thinking of, but we can think of another way to say it.
Yeah. Yep.
So same in ASL, we have this much language available to us, and there are many different ways to convey that message about anorexia.
Yeah. Yep. Perfect. Thank you so much. Oh my gosh, I have a ton of notes to now type up so I don't forget it, what I wrote down. Thank you.
Okay.
Seriously, that's so much time this week with all of the students, so I really, really appreciate it.
Well, it's my pleasure, and I'm so glad I got to meet you. And now I'm realizing that on your name it says Lindsay Joy.
Mm-hmm.
Do you go by Lindsay Joy?
Most of the time, but it's actually my middle name. But I just have a lot of friends named Lindsay, so they call me Lindsay Joy. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what do you like to be called?
Either one, really. I like Lindsay Joy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, Lindsay Joy, pleasure to meet you.
Thank you. You as well. Have a good night.
Thank you. You too.
Bye-bye. About 500, they experience oppression and discrimination in their cultural and their language as well. Looking back to 427 BC, Greek philosopher Plato wrote an essay called Catullus, using the character Socrates, saying this quote: "If you don't have tongue or voice, but you want to express your feelings and opinions, but you can't, well, you can look at the deaf community and see how they use facial expressions, gestures, body movements. And you can express it just like that." Sign language has been here for thousands of years. Looking back to 1700s in America, Martha Vineyard's Island was full of deaf and hearing people, generations, and everyone, 1 out of 25 people were hereditary deaf. Everybody on the island could sign and know how to use sign language and communicate with each other. It was one cohesive world. Every activity and event and meeting was using sign language. Everybody was accepted. It was very successful. Later on in 1817, America finally established its first formal deaf school called American School for the Deaf in Hartford, Connecticut. Many children from that island moved to that school, to attend that school, and when they graduated, they moved on to different deaf schools in all over America. That was one of the most golden era of our deaf world. Gallaudet was established in 1864, and it was the first liberal college for deaf people. Deaf people graduated from the American School of the Deaf and then attended Gallaudet. It was the best inspiring golden era of the deaf world. People were well educated, the hearing and deaf world were cohesive, and it was amazing. 66 years later, in 1880, that's the year we will never forget. It's ingrainedly etched in our mind. It had a huge impact on the deaf community. All the delegates in the world traveled to Milan, Italy, to discuss the Second International Congress of Deaf Education, and they voted for deaf children to not be able to use sign language and that they need to learn how to speak and lip read. Many of the jobs started depleting for deaf people. Deaf college professors were fired and they were replaced with hearing teachers teaching deaf students how to talk and read lips. This was a dark time in our era. We experienced a lot of depression. It really separated the deaf world that was signing and the English world. That happened for many years. Finally, in 1890, Gallaudet University, English professor named William Stokey noticed that many people were using sign language on campus, and so then he hired 2 deaf researchers to explore this further. Finally, they were able to prove with evidence that sign language was its own language. It has its own syntax, morphology, body movements, hand shapes, and that's how the 5 parameters of ASL was originated. Sign language wasn't based on English structure. It was completely separate, had separate meaning as well. People assume that sign language is based on English, but it's not. Finally, we're able to start developing ASL and recognizing it as a language. At that time, many hearing children that were born to deaf adults were called codas, and they grew up in the deaf community. Sign language was their first language, and they were taking on the responsibilities of becoming interpreters because they were able to interpret with the communication access from the hearing to the English worlds. But we didn't have enough codas. That was the baby booming area. Finally, in 1990s, the interpreting programs started developing throughout the US. Many hearing students that had no idea about sign language or culture realized that you can't learn sign language and deaf culture in 2 to 4 years. They can't learn the language and deaf culture simultaneously, especially in 2 to 4 years. It was a very challenging for hearing interpreters to learn how to interpret between the deaf and hearing worlds. Today, you will see a new movement. Deaf interpreters are taking on the responsibility of becoming interpreters. Sign language is their first language, so they understand the culture. They can take in the message, interpret it into the hearing interpreter, and the hearing interpreter will interpret it. That's a team, a hearing and deaf interpreter team. If you look back to the 1800s, or 1880, excuse me, we'll see more deaf interpreters interpreting in court, hospitals, medical field. And using that team again for having a deaf and hearing interpreting team. Going back to 1880, if those delegates had never voted to forbid sign language, we would maybe remember those golden ages and when we would teach children deaf children how to sign, and maybe everybody would be able to sign. 1880 impacted us and separated our worlds. If that had never happened, the vote had never happened, where would we be today? Does it mean that you all would be signing just like us? And would be one cohesive world? We need interpreters. We can go back to the Martha Vineyard's Island days, and it could continue since then. We could all sign every day and communicate with each other. We could go back to our golden ages where everybody was well educated. It's just something to think about. Thank you.